All right, thanks. It seems like that's all set up fine. So we'll hope for no other technological glitches, and we're good to start in a moment. On health coaching in practice, helping your clients achieve their health goals. Thanks for taking time to join us today. So this is a little bit of a different webinar to the ones that we usually give. We're not going to talk about any products or ingredients at all today. So I know that our group of practitioners is quite diverse, and I'm just going to give a general overview, and hopefully you can take something from today's webinar to use in your own practice, or maybe even your own lives. So we know where we want to be, and our clients also do, but it's reaching where we want to be that's difficult. And as healthcare practitioners, taking a full case history and giving expert advice is often the straightforward part of the job. But getting clients to implement our recommendations can be much more difficult. And there's an obvious reason. We have information overload these days and hectic lifestyles. So advice is very easy to access, and there's almost more information that we need on the internet. But it's challenging to put the advice into practice. And too often ourselves and our clients get caught in a vicious circle of stress and health issues, coupled with not making time for self-care and health-promoting practices. And we know that the best assessments, advice, and supplements may be ineffective without consistent behavior supporting nutrition, sleep, stress reduction, and appropriate exercise. And this leads to unwell, unhappy clients and unfulfilled practitioners. And this topic's close to my heart for two reasons. The one, in my previous life, working as a medical doctor and now as a nutritionist, I know that when consulting with clients and either prescribing medicine, giving advice about nutrition and supplements, sometimes there are underlying health behaviors that need to be changed, and that's really the only thing that will lead to optimizing health. And it's frustrating when clients aren't making those changes. So we're just going to talk about a few things. Firstly, about why we want to assist clients with goal settings, why change is so difficult, the stages of change, and then helping clients to set goals, focus areas, smart action steps, and looking at their readiness to change, again, their barriers and their motivators to change, and then really finalizing action steps and giving them some tools that will give them the best chance of success at implementing those action steps at home. So as practitioners, we have a common aim to create sustainable long-term behavior change for tangible client benefits and practitioner fulfillment. So many of our clients have goals but are unsure what steps to take to achieve them, or they know what they need to do but they can't bring themselves to start implementing action steps or stick with the steps for long enough to appreciate the benefits. And when we as practitioners marry our roles of experts with that of health coach and ally, it's more than just telling clients what to do, but about helping them decide which focus areas will help them achieve their health goals, co-creating smart action steps, and assisting them with tools and tips to overcome their barriers, increase motivation, and helping them to reassess and adapt their goals as they go along. So why move from expert to coach or ally to help clients achieve their goals? So we all really want to see clients improve their wellness. I think that's why we entered this career, because that's what we find fulfilling for ourselves. Helping clients to set their own action steps and to follow through with them is empowering for clients and gives them a greater chance of success. It also takes the emphasis off practitioners being solely responsible for clients' health outcomes, so that if they don't get better, they don't put it down to a practitioner not being effective. enhances the consultation process, I think, and leads to fulfillment for practitioners and hopefully to more follow-up appointments to help clients reevaluate their goals and see how they're progressing with their action steps. And if they do achieve success in optimizing their health, hopefully that will lead to word-of-mouth referrals for us. But change is difficult. So we know that few people engage in the top 5 health behaviors. So those are not smoking, no moderate alcohol, sleeping 7 or more hours a night, getting regular physical activity, and maintaining a normal body weight. And only a few of us follow through on our New Year's resolutions. And most people that lose weight gain it back. So this is not easy. And why is behavior change so difficult? Well, there are competing priorities. To really look at changing behavior, you need time and you need energy. Some people may see change as challenging. They might be fearful about the changes in their life it might bring. For some it might create a sense of loss as they have to give up behaviors that they find pleasurable. Sometimes it's addictions, which are physically and emotionally addictive. We know that sleep impacts decision making, so if we sleep deprived, we'll be more likely to make poor decisions. Some clients may lack willpower, may lack support to make the changes. They may have disassociation with their future self, so they may know what they want to do, but really not see how they can get there and be caught in their current behavior. We don't like being told what to do, just a natural form of human behavior. So if someone tells maybe their GP or family members told their client what to do, they might be resisting that. Some clients may not feel that they can make changes due to low self-esteem and self-efficacy, not believing that they are capable of making the changes. And then we know that stress promotes temporary relief activities. So eating foods that are high in sugar, high in salt, high in fat, drinking alcohol. Right. So although change is difficult, it is very worthwhile, and often small changes can have big impacts. So in this study, this was a study over 14 or 15 years, which found that replacing 30 minutes of sedentary time with light physical activity, which could have just been walking, reduced risk of death from all causes by 11% and from cardiovascular disease by 24%. And replacing 10 minutes of sedentary time per day with moderate to vigorous physical activity resulted in a 38% reduction in deaths from cardiovascular disease. So it's really great. Clients don't have to do a complete about turn in their lives. They don't need to become ideal, but small changes will have a big impact. So one of the strategies in making change easier to achieve is shrinking the change, so breaking it into more doable chunks. And that increases the chance of success for several reasons. It reduces the resistance to getting started. So if someone knows that the change won't disrupt their lives too much, they'll be more likely to start it. It builds momentum to making more changes. And it gives a series of small wins which increase confidence for making bigger changes. So most people have an idea of their future self, the ideal of what they'd like to be, but they often identify more with their present selves. So someone that likes instant gratification and lacks willpower. And it's been suggested that clients should engage more with an ideal version of who they want to be. So imagining themselves as the person who eats healthily, exercises regularly, feels good about themselves, is more healthful, and to make small changes to move towards that person. It's even been suggested that clients could imagine writing a letter from their future self to their present self, thanking themselves for the decisions and behaviors that they've made, which have now moved themselves towards a more ideal version of who they want to be. And another suggestion is that someone could imagine talking to a friend or a child or a family member who is about to make a change, and how they would encourage that person and motivate them, and then pretend that they're talking to themselves and give themselves those same positive messages. So this is quite interesting. There have been quite a few studies done on how feelings of shame and guilt sabotage health goals. So in this study, participants were told that they would be watching TV, and they would be assessed as to how watching television impacted their taste sensation while eating chocolate. So they were all given a donut to start off with, so that they would all be have the same amount of fullness. And then basically they had unlimited chocolate of different flavors to eat while they watched television. The one group was given compassionate messages. So they were told, some people might feel guilty about eating these treats, but don't be too hard on yourself. We all eat treats sometimes, and it's just part of the study, so don't feel bad. The other group wasn't given any compassionate messages. And what was found, that the group given the compassionate messages ate less chocolate than those that weren't. And it's quite interesting that when we have feelings such as guilt and shame about not engaging in the behaviors that we know we should, in an attempt to get rid of those feelings, we fall back to the very pattern that triggers these emotions in the first place. So it's really about, with clients, letting go of the ideal and adjusting expectations, and accepting that we're not always perfect. When we make changes, we will relapse and continue the behaviors that we were trying to stop. And it's really a learning experience. So basically, figuring out what led us to have that relapse and how can we avoid that situation in the future. So it's not so much about falling off the wagon, but it's about the wagon has stopped and it will move on. So motivation, the internal driving force by which we move towards a goal. So motivation has three components. Activation. So for example, the decision to initiate a behavior or a change. So somebody booking a session with you might be the activation. Persistence, which is continued effort towards a goal despite obstacles. For example, someone that carries on with their exercise in bad weather. And then intensity. So although two people might have the same amount of motivation, some might pursue a goal with more vigor. So for example, an unfit person who walks 1 mile 5 times a week might be pursuing their goal with more intensity than someone who's already fit, running 30 minutes once a week. And motivation can be internal or external. So extrinsic motivators are those that come from outside and push people forward towards a goal. So they might have a feeling of they should be achieving something or doing something. And extrinsic motivators are often short-lived because somebody is doing it for reasons such as fear. So they're scared of a health outcome, so they change their behavior. There may be some reward attached to changing behavior, such as their spouse promising to buy them new clothes if they lose a certain amount of weight, or something like that. Extrinsic motivators can be love-based, so concern of a family member that if somebody doesn't stop smoking, they'll develop lung disease. sometimes there are financial rewards or recognition involved with changing behavior. So what we would really like to see and to draw out in our clients is intrinsic or internal motivators. And those will make our clients change their behavior because of self-love, self-care, self-compassion, or because the behavior itself makes them feel good about themselves. So they'll have feelings of I want to, or being pulled forward towards a goal rather than being pushed. So sometimes motivators can start off as external, and then once a client realizes how good changing the behavior makes them feel, they can become intrinsic. So someone might start eating healthier food and really feel quite deprived and not enjoy it too much. But when they realize that they feel so much better, or they've lost weight, or they can sleep better or exercise better, they might carry on with that behavior because of the positive impact it has on their life, regardless of the health impact. And really helping clients to discover their internal motivators is the key to long-term successful change. So it doesn't help to push someone into change when they're not ready for it. And really before we discussing change with someone, we should evaluate at what stage of change they are. So you've probably seen the stages of behavior change model by Prochaska and Di Clemente, excuse my pronunciation. There are 5 stages of behavior change, and convincing, persuading, or manipulating tactics are not as effective as focusing on the client's own agenda and supporting it with active listening, powerful questioning, empathy, unconditional positive regard, and meeting the client where they are in the stages of change framework. As individuals move through the various stages of change, new thought patterns emerge, bringing new insights that support behavioral change and increase motivation and self-efficacy. And quite interestingly, changing one behavior has been shown to increase the odds of taking action on a second behavior, which is known as co-action. All right, so let's have a look at the stages of change. So in pre-contemplation, clients are not considering changing at all. They might be in denial, so someone who's had a heart attack but downplaying the significance of it, or someone who's been diagnosed as pre-diabetic but hasn't changed their diet at all. They might have given up due to past failure, so someone who tried to stop smoking or dieting to lose weight in the past and didn't succeed might not be willing to try again. And then they might be dealing with grief or loss of control or shame because of a medical diagnosis. So some might see the diagnosis as a personal failure, and they might be struggling to come to terms with it, so not even thinking about making a healthcare change. These clients may come across as hopeless, indifferent, or defensive. And if you encounter a client that is expressing resistance about changing, then it might be that you've moved too far along the path of trying to get them to change their action, and you need to take a step back. So the goal with these clients is really for them to think about changing a behavior, not getting ready to change something or make an action. And it would be good for us to maintain a positive relationship with these clients, personalize risk factors, pose thoughtful questions, let them talk about their feelings and fears about their diagnosis, give them hope that they do have control in their health condition, so behaviors that they might change will affect the outcome of their condition, and encourage them to connect with others in a support group environment or with family and friends, and to get all the support they need so that they can meet their immediate needs of feeling secure, getting their emotional needs met so that they can then progress along the stages of change. So in contemplation, clients may be ambivalent about change. So they're thinking about the pros and cons of changing. They know that it's a good idea to change, but they're thinking about giving up behaviors that are enjoyable, and they may be feeling a sense of loss. So in this stage, we can give empathy, praise, and encouragement for any statements that indicate clients are thinking about change, and ask them questions like what difficult things they've accomplished in the past, reiterate their motivations and reasons for changing, and then get them to think about if they didn't change, what the consequences of that would be. So in the preparation stage, clients are planning to make a change in maybe about the next month. They might experiment with small changes, like trying new foods, changing their brand of cigarette maybe doing a little bit of exercise. And in this stage, we really want to encourage them to do thorough preparation, because it will give them the best chance of succeeding once they start taking the action. Praise them, encourage them to address all of their barriers, and to look at how the changes will really fit into their lives. So we all wish that our clients would be at the action stage. So this is the most obviously busy period, requiring time and energy. And we really hope that they've made proper preparation so that they'll have the best chance of success. And we really want to praise any action taken moving towards their goals. So we know that, for example, with New Year's resolutions, often we jump into change at the action stage. Maybe on New Year's Eve, we sort of think about what changes we'd like to make, but we haven't moved through the contemplation and preparation stages. So jumping straight into an action stage often leads to failure. So it can take years to get to a maintenance stage where basically the action has become a habit. And most people relapse several times and move through the cycle of change before change becomes truly established. And in this stage, when relapses happen, we can focus on the reasons for them and learn from them. So, for example, ex-smokers, might learn to avoid smoke-filled environments. Those trying to eat more healthily might learn to order off the menu and not go to all-you-can-eat buffets, or to take healthy snacks with them when they go to places that they know that they might be tempted by unhealthy choices. And a simple tool you can use is this readiness to change ruler, where for a particular action you might say to someone, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready to change are you? And then ask them, why is that number not further to the left? To elicit motivational statements, so to help them to find the internal motivation to make the change. And then to elicit barriers, so things that are stopping them from making the change, ask why the number they chose wasn't further to the right. So choosing goals. These can be quite specific or quite broad and up to the client. But what we really want to draw out is the client's motivation for making the change. So once they've said what their goal is, we could ask them what would change in your life for the better if you made that change. If you didn't make the change, how do you see your life looking? And what they would need to do to achieve the goal, and basically find those internal motivators, write them down, and remind them of them as you go along the process. Once we have a goal, then the next step is to look at focus areas which will help achieve that goal. And then for each focus area, then we can break that down into various action steps that clients could take. So depending on your area of practice, you might be looking at nutrition more as your focus area, but there are many non-nutrition examples. So apart from nutrition, one can focus on sleep, exercise, stress reduction, increasing pleasurable activities, increasing connections with others, relationships with family and friends, stopping smoking. And it's really good to let the client come up with ideas for focus areas rather than suggesting them yourself right from the start. So you could ask them if they have any ideas as to what will work or anything that they've tried before that has worked or hasn't worked to help them move towards their goal. And they might have specific goals set by their doctors that they need to work towards. So if someone really doesn't have too many ideas about what they need to do, one can use a tool called the wellness wheel. And also for those clients who are really complex and they have tried lots of things, but they're still not well and they're not really sure what to do next, the wellness wheel can give new insights as to what areas of their life they could focus on. So there are different versions of this. This is just one of them. So the idea is that a wheel will only turn if it's nice and smooth and round. If part of the wheel or part of one of the spokes is bent, there'll be a bumpy ride. So some different areas to look at are physical health, emotional health, spiritual health or self-development, pleasure. So those things in our week that give us joy and make our eyes light up, career, finances, relationships, connections with others, and the environment, which could be one's work environment or home environment. And the idea is that you ask clients to mark off where on a scale of 1 to 10 they are in feeling satisfied with those areas. So I couldn't somehow get 1 to 10 on my PowerPoint, but if you can imagine that 0 is in the middle of the wheel and 10 is at the outside. If they're very satisfied with those areas, they'll mark 10, giving a nice round outline to the wheel, and then different numbers as they go along for different sections. And then you can really focus on the sections that have scored lowly. That's just an example. All right, so just an example of a client. So Pam, 42-year-old mother of 2, whose health goals might be to lose weight and increase energy. So the focus areas we might discuss with her. So for nutrition, she might be wanting to decrease her refined carbohydrates, increase vegetables and fruit, and decrease alcohol intake. And for non-nutrition goals, she might want to improve her sleep, start regular exercise, and start a stress release activity. So we have the goals, then we have the focus areas that will feed into those goals. And lastly, we need to look at action steps. So what we really want to do is to think of as many action steps as possible. And on the next slide, those are some things we brainstormed with Pam. But action steps need to be smart to have the best chance of success. So what do we mean by smart? So they should be specific. So instead of just saying exercise more, we could have a specific goal. So walking 5 times per week for 30 minutes. They need to be measurable or trackable. So for example, rather than to increase vegetable intake, we could say eat 3 vegetables with dinner 4 nights a week. And we're going to look at a tool that we can give clients so that they can track their achievements over the week. We'll look at that later. So goals must be achievable, taking into account resources. So does the client have enough time, enough money, enough skills to achieve the goal? It should be realistic. So they shouldn't set a goal for themselves as to losing too much weight in a certain time period, or doing a sporting event that really, from being sedentary to running 10 kilometers in a month or something like that. And then smart action steps should be time bound, so framed with a duration and a number of days per week. So, as we said before, walking 5 times per week for 30 minutes. It makes it really clear as to what they're trying to achieve. So what I encourage you to do is to brainstorm as many smart action steps with your clients as you can. You can always narrow them down later or adopt them at further time points. So with Pam, these were some action steps that we brainstormed. And it's really great to get clients to come up with their own suggestions first, rather than making all the suggestions yourself. So for each focus area, we brainstormed 2 action steps. For example, for decreasing refined carbohydrates, she suggested eating oats rather than cereal or toast for breakfast 3 times a week, swapping her lunchtime sandwich for a homemade salad with legumes 3 times a week. For increasing vegetables and fruit, we suggested eating 3 portions of veg or salad with dinner 5 times a week, having a piece of fruit for an afternoon snack 5 times a week, and trying to make the number of times per week really manageable, and also not saying every day a week, because doing something every day is often not really realistic, and it may give someone a feeling of failure if they don't achieve the step every day. All right. So once you've got a whole lot of different ideas, you can look at readiness to change and ask the client to rate each action from 1 to 5. So where 5 would be that they have the confidence, the support, and the resources to implement that action step immediately. And that will help you to narrow down the action steps. So just because something is a 1, so clients aren't ready to do that step yet, it doesn't mean that they won't be ready in a month or 2 months. But it's, what could you put into place tomorrow if you had to? And then what we want to do is to finalize the action steps. So to work them into maybe 3 to 5 nutrition and non-nutrition steps. So you wouldn't really want to send someone away with more than, say, 6 things to work on straight away. So with Pam, we've chosen, we've highlighted in green the steps that she scored 5 for readiness to change on. So she was ready, she felt motivated that she could implement those changes straight away. And you can discuss with your clients if they feel that those changes are manageable, or if they want to adjust them at all. So adjust the number of times per week to make them feel more manageable. You can give them tips on making the changes easier to manage, which you will have from your experience, but they might not have thought about. So just as some examples, preparing a healthy breakfast and lunch for work the night before, rather than trying to rush and do it in the morning. Planning the week's meals ahead, on a Sunday, sitting down, looking at their goals for the week. If they get tempted at a supermarket, doing online shopping or click and collect. I've heard some clients who don't exercise because it's too much of a mission to get changed, especially in winter, into exercise clothes. Well, wear your exercise clothes when you get up in the morning. That sort of thing. It's just tips that you will be able to give them. And looking at any barriers that might stop them from achieving their action steps. So time, how could they make time in their week to fit it in? Do they have the finances? If they don't have the financial resources to do some things like join a gym or exercise classes at the moment, what exercise could they do for free? If they don't have any skills to, say they don't have great cooking skills, well, could they order a recipe box that comes to the house? Things like that to help them be able to implement the change. And as always, looking at their motivators as to why they want to make the changes in the first place. So we spoke about internal and external motivators, and that internal is always really the best. But for those that don't feel very internally motivated, one can ask them if there's any reward that they would like to give themselves. It's after certain successes have been achieved. And often we think about rewards in terms of food. So just a few ideas for non-food rewards. So, well, the first one I'll start with is a food, healthy food. So maybe they'll buy that wild sockeye salmon that they've been eyeing, but they could buy themselves a new book, go for a massage, book an outing that would be a treat, join a new class, buy themselves some exercise equipment or clothes, buy themselves some new music, many non-food rewards. But hopefully after time, making the behavioral changes will make them feel so good and have other benefits that they won't need any rewards, and their reward will just be how good they feel from doing new behaviors. So up until now, they could still have talked about action steps and really have a good idea of what they want to do, but unless they really have something to track their progress and measure it and something to hold them accountable, all the preparation work can go to naught. So I really like this tool, which is a tracking sheet, and I put a star there because it's almost like a star chart for grown-ups. So those of us with children know that star charts can really work, and with adults they certainly can work as well. So what I'd encourage you to do is, with your clients in your room, get out a blank tracking sheet, just make a template and write down the steps that you've agreed with them, and then ask them what days of the week they're going to put this into practice. So that moves it from a sort of vague abstract goal into something that they really are going to start implementing from the next week. And when you ask them, okay, so what days will you be able to go for a walk for 30 minutes? It makes them really think how the changes will fit in with their lifestyles. They might decide at that point that actually some of the action steps need to be modified because they won't actually be able to walk every day of the week or something like that. But if they leave home with this sheet that they can put up on their fridge or somewhere where they're going to see it often, this really increases the chance that they will carry through these steps. And the tracking sheet has a line for the step that they want to achieve, and then a line underneath it that they can mark off if they have actually achieved the step. So, for example, our first behavior change, lights out by 10 o'clock, 4 nights a week. Pam did achieve that on the nights that were planned. But then for the next step, walk for 30 minutes 4 times a week. Well, she didn't do it on Monday and Wednesday as she planned, but she decided to make it up. And she did actually achieve her goal, but on different days of the week. And then meditating 4 times a week, well, she didn't really achieve, she only achieved that on one day of the week. And when you follow up, then you'll explore with her, well, why didn't you achieve it on the other days? Maybe you planned to do it last thing at night, but you were too tired or too busy. and how could you change that to make it more achievable. So maybe you set your alarm for 10 minutes early and you do it in the morning instead. So all about looking at when steps aren't achieved, not viewing it as a failure, but just viewing it as not an appropriate action step, and how one can change the action steps to make them achievable. And if someone has achieved all of the steps, then you can move on and make the steps a bit more difficult, or bring in new action steps. And you'll have ideas from the ones that you brainstormed previously that you didn't decide to implement. So before you let the client go, you'll send them away with a tracking sheet, but also thinking about any additional extras that you want to include. So you might want to give supplement recommendations. If you're not sure, this is the only time I'll mention Readiness. You can always give our nutrition team a call, ask the clients to give us a call or send us an email or engage with us on live chat. We're always happy to help clients choose supplements and give recommendations. Look at whether you need to refer the client to anyone else. So any health red flags, you might need to refer them to their GP or to another practitioner that has more expertise than you. So to a nutritional therapist, to an exercise therapist, etc. And then any other tools that you might want to give them, like information leaflets, recipe leaflets, exercise leaflets, etc. And then following up clients. So why do we want to follow up? Well, the reason's obvious. If you have a one-time appointment and you don't engage with the person again, they probably won't follow up on the changes that you've suggested, or they might follow up on them for a small amount of time, but then lose motivation or willpower. And also, as we know, the first consultation takes a lot of time and effort. And what you really want to do, both for yourself and for the client, is to follow up regularly to make sure that they are implementing the changes so that they will achieve the wellness that they're seeking. How often? So often following up more often in the beginning is important, and more frequent, shorter appointments can have better success than longer appointments spaced more widely apart. How to follow up? So these days people are busy. They don't always want to come and see you. You can have brief follow-ups by Skype, by email, by telephone, and these can be very effective. Also, just having a healthcare professional to hold them to account for the changes they're making can be very helpful. And then the goalposts will need to be moved. So asking them whether their goals are still the same, whether their focus areas are still the same, and looking at the action steps that they have achieved and how they can modify those action steps to either make them more manageable, to make them kind of more impactful, so more difficult, so that they see bigger changes in their life, adding new steps. It can be a really rewarding long-term process that you can go through with a client. So just to summarize, to recap, step one would be assessing a client's readiness to change. No point in trying to get them to change if they're still in the pre-contemplation or contemplation stages. If they're in the planning stage, encourage them to make all the preparations they need before launching into action. Then step two, looking at their goals and what the motivators are for those goals, and hopefully finding internal motivators rather than external. Step three would be taking the goal and breaking it up into focus areas that could help them achieve their goal. So either nutrition focus areas and non-nutrition focus areas. And then from those focus areas, thinking of many different smart action steps that might help them achieve their goals. Step four would be narrowing down the action steps by using the Readiness to Change tool, or not, just discussing it with them, and narrowing it down to sort of 3 to 5 nutrition and 3 to 5 non-nutrition action steps, so that they maybe go away with 6 initial steps to implement straight away. If they're really motivated and ready to make changes, you can have more. And if they're not, then lesser number of steps. Basically, you just want them to be successful in implementing what they've decided upon. Step 5, discussing barriers and how to get over them, giving them tips on getting through their action steps. And then the rewards is just optional, whether, if they feel that they need something like that to motivate them. Step 6, my favorite one, giving them a tracking sheet, something that will hold them accountable and will serve as a visual reminder and motivator for them to actually put the steps into action. And any other tools that you might want to give them or referrals that you might want to make. And then step 7, follow up, very important. We don't want to see someone just once and they're not going to benefit as much if we see them just once. We want regular follow-up so that we can help them stay on track, help them modify their steps to move towards their goal. And that's it. I hope that was in some way helpful and that you'll be able to maybe put some of that into practice. Have a good day further. Thank you.